The state capture inquiry has come to a dramatic end this Friday afternoon. Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo has had to go into isolation after an associate tested positive for COVID-19. He's also announced that former President Jacob Zuma has refused to testify at the Commission next week. And earlier in the day, the Commission heard evidence from former Eskom Chief Executive Brian Molefe. So plenty on the go. Let's start with those latest developments. Our reporter Barry Bateman joining us. Hi there, Barry. So talk to us about this abrupt end halfway through Molefe's testimony this afternoon. What exactly did Justice Zondo say?
Yeah, good afternoon, Sally. Yeah, it did come as a bit of a shock. We were expected to hear more from Brian Molefe, but the Deputy Chief Justice coming out and giving us that announcement that COVID-19 has brought the hearings to a halt. A close associate, somebody he works close with, has tested positive for the virus. And because of that, and because of the protocols involved in when people test positive and the requirements for self-isolation and so on, it's not just the Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, but various other people who work at the Commission who will have to go into self-isolation and go through the required test. So that brought that to an end. But there was also another announcement that Zondo made in relation to former President Jacob Zuma, who was expected to appear at the Commission next week. Take a listen.
The Commission has been informed by the attorneys representing the former President, Mr. Zuma, that he will not be appearing before the Commission next week. He says that should not in any way be seen as disrespect on his part for any legal process. It seems that he says it's because he believes the review application that he has lodged should be finalized first, and that also there is the matter that is in the Constitutional Court which has not been finalized. I'm not trying to exhaust every reason that he gives, but I think it's fair to give, at least to mention that those are the main reasons he gives through his lawyers.
Yes, of course. So former President Zuma wants Zondo to recuse himself. Of course, last year Zondo considered that, delivered his judgment that he didn't need to. But of course, the former president, is now taking that on review. So that's that. And then, of course, the COVID scare that you've mentioned. But Brian Molefe's testimony alone today was really quite dramatic. He addressed the Commission and he spoke about the current state of Eskom, and he's blamed a rather high-profile person.
He has indeed, Sally. He's gone straight to the top, President Cyril Ramaphosa, but he took us back many years, which had to do with the deal involving Optimum Colliery and Glencore. He accused Glencore of not doing their due diligence and not reading the contracts related to the supply of coal to Eskom when they bought Optimum. But what they did early on is they sold 10% of shares to, he wasn't the president then, but to Cyril Ramaphosa, and made him the chairman of the board. He says that this was a clear case of a company trying to use political meddling to get what they want. And he further went on to refer to a conflict of interest, because Cyril Ramaphosa, as deputy president of the country then, was appointed as the head of the Eskom War Room, which he described as a de facto board of Eskom, which operated outside of the organization. He said this was a clear conflict of interest, but he went then even further, and where we find ourselves today, he had this to say, and whose fault it was.
Under my leadership, and the leadership of and the leadership and technical expertise of people like Mr. Koko and other engineers, the engineers at Eskom, the guardians as they call them, the employees of Eskom, who, when I was there, became very invigorated and determined to end load shedding. We defeated load shedding in August 2015. On the 8th of August 2015, we stopped load shedding. And we never had load shedding again for 3 years after I had left Eskom. Load shedding came back to Eskom after Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, following the 1 billion rand Nasrec conference, was appointed president of the country.
Has there been any response from Eskom, the presidency? Molefe also had some choice words for Pravin Gordhan. Any response from any of them?
No, not at this stage, Sally. We are certainly looking out for it, but no indication at this stage. But remember, this was these haven't been tested at all. He had an opportunity to make a big statement, and Zondo was even mindful that they would have liked to have had sight of that beforehand to alert various people against whom he made various allegations so they can have an opportunity to respond. But let's wait till his version actually gets tested under the questioning, I think, before we can draw any big conclusions.
Yeah, and there were some questions asked today. Obviously, as you say, it was interrupted. But at some stage, Brian Molefe was talking about a meeting at a Rokamama's restaurant, and he was very quick to note it's not a shebeen. Did he say anything about the much-hyped Saxonwold shebeen?
He did indeed, and how he had been there on numerous occasions. And this was a question about, do you know the Guptas? And he hasn't denied it. And he went back and he was very, I suppose, flamboyant in the way he addressed the commission. He had many anecdotes and nuggets of wisdom about various exchanges he had. And he was talking about buying a bank at one point in about 2008, 2009. And he had heard about some family from India who was doing business in Johannesburg, and he decided to get hold of them. And he actually asked them for the capital to be able to buy a net bank at the point, but the Reserve Bank declined it. But on that question, do you know this family? He said this.
I know Mr. A.J. Gupta. I've been to his house. I've been to their house, and I have been there on numerous occasions. To attend family functions, to have private meetings, a lot of times. So I know them. I know them quite well, especially Mr. A.J. Gupta. Okay. So I will not try to say to you that I don't know them, like it is fashionable to do.
All right, so Molefe is not hiding the fact at all that he is close to the Gupta family, but of course evidence has been led that the Guptas played a role in him being appointed Eskom CEO, and he addressed that today. What did he say?
Yeah, he did, Sally, and it was various people that provided the evidence that people had made comments about lists, for example. Molefe was seconded from Transnet to Eskom before being made permanent there, likewise for Anoj Singh, and their names had featured on lists which were circulated among very high prominent people before such appointments were made, and people were told that these appointments would be made before they were actually made. So the Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo referred to the evidence of Jonas, who had recalled the meeting that he had at that Saxonwold shebeen, where he ran into somebody in a corridor, and this person told him that Brian Molefe's career is secure. He was asked about this very comment and what role the Guptas, if any, played in his career.
I deny that there is any Gupta person who was responsible for my career. I was responsible for my career, and that especially because that hearsay evidence is not even corroborated by anyone. Nobody else overheard what they were saying or came here to say that we are taking care of Mr. Molefe's career. I don't know whether it happened or that Mr. Jonas is remembering it wrong, or it's just a figment of his imagination, or that he can't distinguish it from something that he dreamt to something that really happened. I don't know. But I can tell you now, as under oath, as evidence, that there was no Gupta brother that took care of my career.
So Brian Molefe coming out blazing on a number of fronts. Barry Bateman, thanks so much for that reporting, and I guess we'll wait to find out what happens to the Commission now that the Commission head has had to go into self-isolation, having been exposed to a colleague who's COVID-19 positive. Let's move